Hello and welcome to Transformation Today. Today a new episode with another former colleague, Alice Graves, or what she's called now is Alice Graves-Nguyen. Alice used to be an agency recruiter, then had a very successful career as a corporate recruiter and moved to being a coach, I think about 5 years ago. And she specializes in helping people finding their dream job. And that's what this podcast is about. So, Alice, welcome. Great to have
Thank
another
you.
former colleague here and a friend. So,
Yeah.
can you tell me a bit more about yourself and what got you into coaching and your specific area of coaching?
Yeah. So obviously super nice to be here. Really nice to do this with, as you say, an old colleague and a friend. Well, obviously I started my recruitment career with you at Michael Page. And I did recruitment for 10 years, 5 years agency side, and then 5 years in-house. So actually building recruitment processes. And throughout that time, I realized the aspect that I really loved the most was really working with the candidates and really prepping them for interviews and really helping them succeed. And I'd always had an interest in coaching. So I did a really intensive coaching training. And then I thought, I really love what I'm doing, but something's missing. Like I really
Yeah,
feel there's more I can do with my life. And I thought, if I can combine my expertise in recruitment with my love for coaching and working with people, okay, boom, that's it. This is something I can blend these together. And that's what I did. And I started my career coaching business. So now I work mainly with mid to senior corporate professionals here in the Netherlands. So really my focus is the Netherlands. And majority of my clients are expats. I wouldn't
yeah,
say I only work with expats, but I think because I'm an English speaker, I know a lot about the international market here. And really my main focus is helping people discover what it is they want next. So people who are in
yeah,
a similar situation to me,
yeah,
you've got 10, 15 years work experience, you've done really well, but something's missing and you can't figure out what it is. And I think it's after sort of 15, 20 years, you enter that next phase of your career. So what we do with the coaching program is really help them discover what is that next phase? What is it you want? And then obviously using all of my knowledge to help them actually get the job. So taking them through that whole process of discovery and then actually
yeah,
the more sort of practical implementation of like, how do you write a CV? How do you actually interview? How do you negotiate offers? So taking them
yeah.
through that whole process. And I've been doing that now this is the 5th year now.
Yeah, I thought so.
Yeah,
That was just recording the intro. I'm saying 4 to 5 years. So this is your
yeah,
fifth year. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. I decided to start, in COVID, because why not? Like, I don't know why. I
Why
had
not
my
start a
second
business in
child.
COVID? Yeah.
I know, had a second child, quit my job to start a business whilst the world is locked down. I mean, I don't know what I was thinking.
Yeah. Well, you made it also here. So if you
Yeah,
can make it through COVID, then you can do everything. So
that's
I
true.
think so.
That's true.
Yeah, so what we see in this market is we get a lot of applicants to jobs, and with some of them it sounds like they're just applying randomly to things. So I think what you're doing is super relevant to our candidates and our clients to help people decide what they actually want first, so that
Yeah.
they only apply for the good stuff.
100%. And I think, there's so many reasons to be clear on what you want. Some people are really looking for fulfilling careers.
Yeah,
And, other people just want a job and, that's fine. It's not for me to say what's right or wrong. It's really for you to discover what you want. But it is about having focus, because focus brings calm to your mind. And I always imagine like it's kind of like launching a rocket. If you don't have clear coordinates, you're like bouncing all over the place. And that will come through in every aspect. As you say, like you can tell on the CV,
yeah,
they haven't really modified it. In the interview, they can't really go into depth because their mind is thinking about a million other things. So the focus isn't just about feeling peace in yourself. It's also so that you have a really good application strategy, because then if you have focus on the industry and the role, every interview you do, it's kind of you're gathering information for the next interview. Every person you speak to, it's got focus, and the brain loves, to have focus.
yeah,
So it's going to help every aspect of your application process, but also just to help you feel happier. And also, if you don't know what you're looking for, if you're jumping from one application to the other, why are you looking? What is it you're hoping to
yeah,
achieve in the next role?
yeah, yeah. Often have like people that only have like push factors they want out of their current company, but
Oh
they
my
don't
God,
know
yes, so
what they
true.
want. Yeah,
Mm. Yeah. I talk to a lot of clients about that. I say never focus on what you're leaving. Always talk about what you're going towards. And even if you hate your current company, no one wants to know. I always say, like, a lot of the things I'll say might not sound lovely, but I promise you this is the truth. Always talk about the excitement about where you're going, because if you're really excited and motivated, that will forgive a lot of sins.
Yeah,
Companies will, if they see you're really
yeah,
invested and as you say, for what you're doing with your work, if you don't have a clear idea of what candidates want, how do you know where to pitch them? And also, your reputation's on the line. If you
yeah,
introduce a candidate to a client and they don't perform well, that damages your reputation. So you
exactly.
want to make sure people you introduce are actually going to, make make you look good in a way.
Yeah. No, I agree. And let's say I'm a candidate, or I call it candidate. I'm one of your clients.
Yeah.
I am working for a large corporate, and I want something else. But I don't know. I can't find the right job. I keep applying, but I keep getting rejected. And this is my first meeting with you. How would you work with me?
So if you keep it, okay, it depends a little bit on
Mm,
whether you know what you want and you just can't find the job, or if you're a little bit uncertain,
I'm
what is it I
uncertain.
want next? So if you're uncertain, so this phase is the first thing we focus on in my coaching program. It's the most important part. It's all about self-discovery. So when people think about careers and jobs, a lot of people think they can sort of just box that part of their life neatly in a corner. It
Hmm.
doesn't work like that. Our lives are holistic. What brings you joy in work, it's directly linked to what brings you joy in life. It's directly linked to your values, to what excites you, to your life priorities. So if someone's really struggling, if you were really struggling to figure out what do I want next, I would want to just spend a few weeks with you really discovering who is Marinka. Because throughout our lives, we make so many decisions based on what we think we're meant to do. Pressure from our parents, like even at school, already sort of having to conform. So suddenly you find yourself in a position where you don't really know what you want because you don't know who you are. So it's all about looking at what are your values? What are your life priorities? What brings you joy at work? What really energizes you? And the key thing I always work on with my clients is, if no one was looking, if nobody would judge you, if you knew no one would care, what would you want to do?
Mm.
So it all starts focusing on what you want. Whereas a lot of people, they start their journey trying to figure out, what can I do? And it's such a subtle shift. But if you're trying to figure out that next step in your career and you're only thinking about what I can do, you're already narrowing down the opportunities. Whereas what we want to do is figure out, what do you want to do? What brings Marinka joy? What really excites you? And then we'll figure out, is it possible? Is this too much of a jump? So
Yeah.
pretty much all of my clients, this is, unless they really know what they want, and then we can just jump into the job search part, we really go through the process of self-discovery. It's all about that. What do
Yeah.
you want? Like, it has to be, you can't skip that phase.
And did you ever? I love juicy stories, but like
Mhm.
juicy examples. Did you ever have like clients that moved to a totally different type of role, a different industry?
Yeah. Um, so one client of mine, she was working in HR, really, really lovely lady, traveled around to different countries quite a lot, very driven, very smart. And she just was really not happy. And we did a lot of work together because pretty much everyone has an idea of who they think they have to be and the real them. And there's always this internal battle going on. Like, I have it, the version of me I'm meant to be. She's this really strict, dominating businesswoman, always wears heels. I mean, you know me, I like rarely wear heels. And then there's the real me, and there's this constant battle. So this is a perfect example where she has this image of the woman she thinks she's meant to be, but she's not really happy. And actually, she took a course. I don't know what the official name is, but it's like to do gardening. So
Oh yeah,
really, fully out of the corporate world to go
Like
and do
hovenier, I think they call it.
is that what it's called?
Yeah.
I don't know. I can't even remember the English word. So she went fully, that was what she wanted to go into, to fully switch. But a switch like that takes a really long time.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really courageous of
Yeah.
her. But yeah, she loved it. She started the program, and she knew it was going to take time. This isn't something you're going to do in a day. And it's all about making peace with it's sort of, what is it called, the sunk cost fallacy? No, that's not fallacy. Sunk cost something. Like when you put so much time and effort into an area, you think you have to keep going. And I think a lot of
Yeah.
people have that with their corporate careers.
Yeah.
I put so much time and energy. It's like, okay, but you still have like another 30 years left.
Yeah.
Like even me in my 40s, I think, oh, I'm so far through my career. No, I'm not even halfway through.
No.
And then another client, he's sort of still in the discovery phase, but was also working in the corporate world, and now is thinking about doing a total switch into something very different, something to do with import export. He's actually exploring that right now, which is really exciting. He's gone off to explore that to see what will come of it. I said, go for it. Like if that's in you, and you can sometimes sense with him, he was struggling a little bit with the job search. So we were doing a bit of digging, and I said, I think I sense a bit of misalignment because your heart doesn't really want this. And he was a bit like, yeah, I think my heart really wants to start my own business.
That's
Yeah.
so
So you
cool.
can sense that, like if you're not doing what you need to do, it's probably because subconsciously something's holding you back. And so that there's that misalignment, and then you're not getting the results that you want. So yeah, he's off exploring that now. So yeah, a few people go very different routes.
Yeah. And then the rest, they stay in the same industry or the same type of profession?
It's a little bit of a mix. So for some people, the shift is really small. So it could be they want to do the same role, but then they discover, actually, I want to go to a different industry. And depending on the work you're doing, that can be an easy shift, or it can be quite difficult, if you have a very industry specific role. And for other people, it's staying in the corporate world, but making a shift in that role. And that's probably the majority of the people I work with. They're making a small shift. Most people come to me because they aren't really happy doing what they're doing, but they're not necessarily saying, I need a drastic change, that I'm going to start my own business. It's more of like a smaller change that they need to look into.
Yeah. And now into more practicality, how is it for people when they apply for roles that are maybe related to what they currently do, but the roles are different? How is that received by companies?
It's hard, and this is where, so I say, there are probably four main ways to apply for jobs: online applications, using your own network, going to in-person events, and expanding your network and working with recruiters, working with people like you, four different ways. If you're going to make a shift, you have to incorporate more of those strategies. So from my experience working in recruitment, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think you see this as well, online applications, especially with in-house recruiters where they are just overwhelmed. So I think you, for instance, do a lot more headhunting.
Yeah.
But for a lot of in-house recruiters, they just have an influx of CVs. They aren't looking for the creative solution. They have a job, they've done the job intake with the hiring manager. The hiring manager said, I need XYZ. They are just looking for XYZ on the CV. If it's like a very difficult role to fill, they might look for a creative solution. So why am I saying this? Because if you're making a shift, if you don't have XYZ, there's a very high chance you're going to get rejected. So for anyone who's doing a shift, I always say you've got to have someone on the inside advocating for you. You've got to network, and you don't need to straight away start with reaching out to new people. Go through your own network. If I would be making a shift, I've worked in the Netherlands now for 15 years. Every person, I mean, you probably have the same, like a lot of the people we started with at Michael Page, they're all doing amazing things in different places. Get on the phone, call them, find out what they're doing. Because if someone can advocate for you, they might say, look, okay, Alice is missing this skill, but I've worked with her. She's a hard worker. She's a nice person. Give her a chance. So if you're making a shift, I'm always telling my clients, you've got to put time and effort into networking. And then also you have to leverage it's always so different depending on the person. Everyone's journey is slightly different. If you have like really very specific and interesting industry experience,
Mm-hmm.
or you worked with a competitor,
Mm.
that can, like that can
Yeah.
be enough. So maybe you're doing a different role, but maybe
Yeah.
you worked at Adidas and there's a slightly different role at Nike. Maybe they're like, okay, we know you know this industry. You worked at one of our competitors. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. 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 Retail loves retail people, for instance.
exactly. And
That's yeah.
sometimes they might just interview you to get the dirt on what's going
Yeah.
on, whatever. Like use it to get your foot in the door and then blow them away in the interview. But I think, if you're going to make a shift, you have to be realistic. The more changes you make to the job you want to do, the harder the process will be.
Yeah.
And you've got to be realistic. You're not going to make that change in a week.
No.
If you're just going to do exactly the same but in another company, online applications is fine.
Yeah.
But any extra change you're adding, a different industry or different role, different industry, different country, you have to add more. You have to be better than everyone else.
Yeah. What do you think in that sense of cover letters and calling after you?
I mean, personally, I'm not a fan of cover letters. I don't know if you ever read them, but I no.
I do write them because I think it's important if you want to highlight why someone is particularly good. If a cover letter was that, it would be fantastic. But sometimes it's just a very long letter.
Yeah, that's true. So I think working in like at Michael Page, people rarely sent cover letters. Working in-house at Booking, people often sent cover letters.
Mm-hmm.
I will say, and I know for pretty much most in-house recruiters I know, if the cover letter is not required, they don't read them. They're just too busy. And also, the cover letter is your opinion as to why you think you're good at the job. And this is like another thing I always say that sounds horrible, but during the application part, like the CV, they don't really care about your opinion. They're just looking for facts. When you're in the interview, okay, then you can blow them away and with your motivation and how you sell yourself. But in that first moment, when they're just looking at the CV and the cover letter, it's really they're scanning for facts. So my advice is always, if they ask for a cover letter, you have to write one, because it's also a way to get rid of people who don't write cover letters straight away rejected. If they don't ask for a cover letter and you're a very strong fit, I really wouldn't bother. If you're missing a few key skills and you really want that job, you can write a cover letter, but you've got to be very precise about what you write. You really need to keep it short, to the point, and highlight what you know is missing from your profile. So you be proactive and you say, I want this role because of this. And I always say, like, try to get them emotionally engaged.
Yeah.
Because if you're emotionally engaged with someone, you're much more likely to speak to them. So try at the beginning in that first sentence to do something that sort of gets them emotionally interested in you. And then I always say, proactively say, I know you're looking for X. Although I don't have that, I do have Y, which is very similar and can be used in blah, 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 because they will see you don't have the skills. And if you're proactively, there's a special term for this. It's actually sort of like a mental manipulation, their psychology trick. You're already sort of coming up with a reason why they don't need to worry. So that's what I would say. But exactly as you say, keep it short. People don't bullet points. But yeah, that would generally be my advice.
Yeah, and then what also triggered me is you said a few times like you should blow them away during the interview. So what is the most common mistake that people make when they go into an interview?
So I think I do a lot of interview role play with my clients to make sure they're really prepared well. I think one of the most common things I see is not being able to answer very simple questions like, why do you want this job? Tell me about yourself. Like, these come up all the time. You should not have to sit and think, why do you want this job? It should just roll off your tongue. So research. And I think you must have experienced this. I definitely experienced this in my recruitment days. You can tell when someone hasn't researched. All their answers are very vague and they're very high level. and you think you can get away with it, but you can't. And again, this comes back to what you said earlier. If you're all over the place, you don't have time to do your research.
No, exactly. But then also you're applying to roles that might not be the perfect match. If you already think, oh, I love this company and I love this role, then the words roll out probably.
Exactly. And then you want to do the research. You're naturally very curious. So I would say, you know, really doing the research so you have like concrete knowledge, why I want this, what I can bring. And then the other common mistake I see people make, either their answers are too high level or they go too much into the detail. Finding that, you know, and I like when people go too much into the detail, you know, when you're listening to that as a recruiter, it's confusing. You're lost. You're totally lost. But at the same time, if they're too high level, it can make them sound more junior than they are. It can actually make you question, did you really do this? Because you're not giving me enough like concrete examples. So finding that balance, it's very tricky. And some people can naturally do it. I think people who are naturally good at communicating, they can really do that. You've got to be good at telling stories. Other people, if you know it's not, you know, a natural talent of yours, take the time to practice. Like we always film our sessions when we do interview role play. And I know our clients hate it, but I say, go and watch yourself. And they're also, oh, I don't want to say, I know you don't want to. Watch how you're answering this. So that is very important, but definitely do the research, know exactly why you want the role, what the company does, you know, the value you can bring, and then really practice those questions. And the other thing, although you didn't ask, I'll add it. Know who you're talking to.
Yeah.
If the interview is with HR, know what is relevant for HR, what's relevant for recruitment, because what they're looking for will be different to, let's say you're talking to a stakeholder. Maybe a stakeholder is looking for something very different to maybe the person who's your peer or your manager or your technical counterpart. So for each interview, you've got to slightly amend how you're answering questions. So that's really important as well.
Yeah. My next question is, can you advise people on 3 things they should do? But this is one of them.
Yeah, that's definitely. So what is in like to prepare for an interview?
Yeah.
Okay, so one thing, definitely know who you're speaking with and how you need to amend the depth you go into. And as I say, what's important to them? A stakeholder is looking for something different. Maybe they're looking for that pushback, and how do you prioritize? The other thing that people don't do enough of is use the internal recruiter to get all the information you can, and also the external recruiter. So if you know you're working with a client, and I know you've done this for years, so I think you would proactively do it. They wouldn't have to ask you, but your candidates, so much information from you about how long's the job been open, what's the person like, how should I present myself, get feedback from you, because you interview everyone. So they should be asking you, Marinka, like, you interviewed me, do you have any tips for me? So if you're working with like an agency, an external recruiter, get every bit of information you can. And like I say, I think most good external recruiters would offer this advice to help their candidates prepare. But the same with in-house recruiters. Find out how many rounds are there, who am I speaking to, what's their communication style like. The recruiter will have done the first interview. Ask them, do you have any feedback for me? Was there anything that concerned you that you think I should discuss in the next interview? You know, there is so much information. The recruiters know everything. How many people have interviewed before? What made someone successful? Why did someone fail in the process? And of course, you can't ask everything, but pick the ones that are most relevant, because the more information you have, you know, the much better you can prepare and present yourself. So that, I think, people rarely do. And also in between every interview, go back to the recruiter and ask, you know, if they're inviting you for the next round, oh, that's so exciting, I'm loving what I'm learning. Again, I'd love to know, was there any feedback? Did they have any concerns about me? Get all that information. So do that, know exactly who you're talking to. And again, a little bit of a crass way to put this, but you really need to think about the company as a buyer, and you are the product. And of course, I know we're more than products, but just in the interview process, it just really helps focus your mind. they are a buyer. They've got their wallet in their pocket. They know they're going to spend whatever 50 grand, 100,000 to buy a service, and they know what they're looking for. And that might be, a beautiful coat. You think of it that way. It's a coat with a zip and a button here. That's kind of the profile. When you walk into that interview, you might have a wardrobe full of clothes. Don't show them everything. Just show them the coat that they want. So you've got to it's kind of a crass way to put it, but not all your experience is relevant or interesting for them. You might be super proud of things you've done, and especially in the first interview when they're just really scanning for like the must-have skills. The further down the process you go, the more they really want to discover who are you as a person, so then you can get broader. But especially at the beginning, really know what is it they're shopping for, what's on that shopping list. And I've got to make sure I'm just telling them what's relevant for them, not some project I did 20 years ago that I'm proud of but they don't care about.
No.
So and it's always hurtful because you think, well, I'm so proud, I'm so proud of this, but it's not relevant in the interview.
No.
In the interview, it's not relevant. So those are the three things I would say.
That's more for later when they want to get to know you. And then
Exactly.
last step, I think we could speak about this forever, but we need to go to an end. The final step is offer. What do you recommend to people? How and when should they present what they want in terms of salary?
So I always say get salary in the first conversation. And I think maybe it's from my recruiting days, never let a candidate get to final round and not know their salary. I always remember an old manager saying a candidate should never reject an offer because of the salary.
No.
They should know at the beginning. And that's the same for my clients. In the first interview, and I always say a good recruiter will bring up what the salary range is.
Yeah.
If they don't, you should be asking what the salary range is, because one, you don't want to go through the whole process and find out, it's 20K below your minimum. Two, you just want to have a rough idea. And so there are 3 different steps you can take, and it's always a little bit difficult. This is why focusing on a role is important, so you can do your research on the salary. If you think you're underpaid and the salary is quite a bit above what you're earning, don't tell them your current salary.
No.
Never tell them. And it's also not their business. Instead, you tell them, this is what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
And they might come back. In fact, I had this with a client just a few weeks ago where I can't actually believe they said this, but the recruiter said, can you tell me what you're on? Because we just want to make sure you're not asking for a really big jump. Not your business.
No, it is. And I respect it when people say that's not your business, or I don't want to discuss this. But
I don't want to discuss. Or you can just say, if you feel a bit nervous, you can also just say, oh, I earn pretty much around this number. They're not going to check. It's not like back in the day when we used to ask people for salary slips.
Yeah.
At Michael Page, shocking. So if it's going to be a really big jump, just tell them what it is you want to earn. Yeah. If you think you're earning quite a bit above what they could offer, but you're willing to take a step down, again, I wouldn't say what you're earning. I'd say what you would like, because they might question, well, why are you willing to take a 10K drop?
Yep.
It might make them curious as to your motivation. And then if you think the salary is aligned, then you can just say, this is my salary, this is what I want. Yeah. If there's a bit of a discrepancy, but you think that in this role, I always say to people, phrase it that, like if what they're offering is well below what you'd accept, just walk away. There's no point. But if maybe it's almost aligned, maybe it's a little bit below, I would generally say, look, I'm still interested to move forward because I want to learn more about the role. And as I learn more about the role and the responsibilities, then, I'm happy to go back and reassess, because that way you leave the window open and you're sort of letting them know, I make my salary demands, as it were, based on responsibility of the role, not just that I've plucked the number. So you keep the, you're letting them know this is still open for conversation.
Yeah. So in general, how much sessions with you do people need before before they find a new
Before
job?
they're clear.
Yeah.
It really depends. It really depends on where you are and what you're looking for. You know, I always say to people, I wish I could say, do this, follow these 10 steps, and you will have a job in this moment. You cannot say that. So much is out of controllable. So the coaching program I have, it's very bespoke, it's very high touch, it's really holding someone's hand through the whole process. And we look at clarity, getting very clear. Then we look at branding, your CV, your LinkedIn, and then we do everything to do with the job search. To go through that process takes roughly 2 to 3 months, and on average 8 to 10 one-on-one private sessions.
Yeah.
But once they've done all that and they understand, you know, I'm all about teaching what's happening behind closed doors so you can implement it yourself. Me and my team then continue to support our clients until they find a job.
Yeah.
And that's part of the program, because the hardest part is the implementation. I always say it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. So you can get clear on what you want. You can have an amazing CV and a LinkedIn. Then we're going to teach you, and for your specific, like what your goal is, we will create a strategy bespoke to you.
Yeah.
Then you've got to implement it. And that's the part where people, you know, it can be really hard. So we will continue to support until they find a new job. And it really depends. You know, some people will find a job in a month. I have that with some clients. Others, it's 3 months. Others, it's 6 months. It really depends on your industry, your experience, and the changes that you're making.
Yeah, I can imagine. And how can they find you? Do most people approach you via LinkedIn, or do you have a website?
I have both, but what I will say is definitely, because I'm pretty sure this will also be shared on LinkedIn at one point, parts of it. So definitely go to my LinkedIn profile. I'll tag myself below.
Good, good, good.
But also, if you go to my website, so it's alicegraves.com, I have a free resources page. And under there, you'll see several free resources focusing on LinkedIn, how to optimize your LinkedIn profile, how to create a great CV, and also how to get clear on those next steps. Start with those first, implement them. See if you find that useful. But definitely, you know, if you want to know more about what me and my team do, then come to LinkedIn, connect with me on LinkedIn, and we can discuss things further.
Okay. Good. It was so nice to. We hang out quite often, but
I
this is
know.
I think the first time we really in depth discussed what you're doing,
I
and it's
know.
so cool. So I love it. I want to thank you so much for doing this, and yeah, maybe we can do
Thank you
another
for
one if
having
people
me.
want more information. Very
100%.
welcome. Yeah.
Definitely. If
So
people have liked this, if people want to know more, I think me and you can chat for hours about this stuff.
exactly. Thank you so much, Alice. Bye.
Amazing. Bye.